Okay, so as the title indicates, today we're going to be discussing what's actually the difference between um, force projection and a force ghost. These are two ideas that were um, displayed quite prominently in The Last Jedi, so I think it deserves a little discussion and analysis. Okay, so this video is going to be a little different from other videos wherein I presented an argument and a theory and exhibits and whatnot, and reach conclusions and this type of thing. This one is a little different. This is really just me contrasting my observations and thoughts about each one. So this probably be a little shorter than the other videos. Again, I'm just starting it, have no idea how long it's going to go, um, but it's just going to be a little more casual. I don't have no notes with me. I didn't have to go back to the Blu-ray and timestamp anything. I'm not quoting anything. So this is really based on my having seen all the films, and just putting together my thoughts on the whole idea. So let's first start with force projections. And I did a video called "Did Leia Know Luke Was a Force Projection?" And I don't know where it shows up in this package. I'm pretty sure it has preceded this video. And in that video, if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to see it, because I really break force projections down, the whole science behind it, the whole movie logic, the whole movie rules surrounding it, supported, corroborated by Rian Johnson's statements about it as well. So very thorough, very tedious, very methodical. If you wanted someone breaking down force projection, that's your go-to movie. Okay, I do have to just set up a few little details about force projecting. First of all, no, we've never seen it before until this movie, and immediately after the movie, you were probably tempted to say, "Oh, this is something that Rian Johnson invented. This is like totally contrived. Like where have we seen that before?" It's kind of dubious that he should come up with this thing. It's not founded in anything that we've seen before. It doesn't really have any kind of predicate or anything like that. And I'm not really going to go into all of it, but when asked about it, Rian Johnson has pointed to some type of literature and alluded to what's termed a doppelganger. I'm not going to go into that whole discussion, but suffice it to say, he has pointed to some Star Wars literature on the subject, implying that no, he didn't invent it, that it's grounded it in prior literature that may or may not be canon. I think that's been a subject of some debate. Well, at any rate, he's certainly the first person to introduce it into a film. Let's make that clear. And basically, a force projection is a projected appearance of a person, or I guess it could be anything, but I believe it's pretty much of the person doing the projection. I mean, we know it's not exactly the same as themselves, because as we saw in The Last Jedi, and what people have pointed out, the projection seemed to be younger than the real life Luke. Now you could say, oh no, it's the same age, it's just cleaned up. I guess that could be a debate, but I think most people believe it's sort of a younger version of Luke. nothing. But that's really no matter. That's immaterial. So really a moot point. The fact of the matter is that a force projection is pretty much like an apparition, in that it's immaterial. It does not have any matter or substance to it, and no weight to it for that reason. It doesn't leave an imprint in the sun or footprints. It doesn't leave a red footprint. You can't torch it. You can't put a lightsaber into it. Or you could, but it's not really doing any damage to actual tissue, because it's not with any tissue and whatnot. So that's really, and I go in far greater detail in that video, but that's pretty much the basics of it, and the fact that it really has no tangible interaction with the real world. So that's why it can't, like pick up a rock and throw it at you or anything like that. It can't, wield the force by itself and do anything like that. And that's why, sadly, when Luke appeared in front of the First Order on the battlefield, with all the walkers and crafts and Kylo Ren, he really could not manifest any type of spectacular battle or fight or anything like that, because force projection can't do that. It's plain and simple. So it's really no more than a decoy, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's pure and simple. That's exactly what it is, really no more than a decoy. So let's talk about Force Ghosts. And what do we know about Force Ghosts in the movies? Now, I'm aware that there's been some presentation of Force Ghosts in some of the literature. I'm not really going to get into that. I'm going to really try to stay confined to, our history with Force Ghosts in the films. All right. Now, this is sort of our foundation for Force Ghosts. Now, I'm going to make a distinction between hearing the Force Ghosts and seeing the Force Ghosts. Now, we're well aware in, let's say, the original trilogy, we heard Force Ghosts from time to time, even after Obi-Wan Kenobi died. We heard his voice, once or twice in the rest of the movie. Most famously, when Luke was making a little bombing run for the Death Star. So, use the Force and all that. Very critical moment. Really, literally the climax of the movie, that little interchange there, right? He said that as a spirit, as a ghost. Didn't see him, but we heard him. And, that was an experience. And I'm sure somewhere along the line, Yoda may have spoken to Luke. Don't quote me on that, but I'm supposing that even Yoda may have spoken to Luke here and there with some type of advice. Okay, but really the first time we actually saw this entity would, I think, be in Return of the Jedi, when Obi-Wan Kenobi spoke to Luke at length, probably about 3 minutes, where he really lays out the secrets of Luke's heritage, pretty much nails down that Darth Vader is his father, brings up that he has his sister, and Luke put two and two together. He realizes he's talking about Leia, and Obi-Wan, he lays out his history with Darth Vader, kind of lays a whole, pretty much lays out a big backstory all while, in his ghost form, so to speak. All right. And then the next time we see these ghost forms is at the end of that film, where after he's already, after his Luke's father, Anakin slash Darth Vader has died, and we get the big reveal when he lifts up the helmet, and then at the end of the movie, we see really a reunion of the Jedi ghosts. We had Anakin, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, all standing there, all smiling, all in their garbs and robes and stuff like that, like a family reunion, and just happy, smiling. I'll never forget that scene. Right at the end, of course, in my mind, I see the older gentleman Anakin, not the Hayden Christensen Anakin. Again, I'm an old timer, so that's how I saw it for the first time in a theater with the older guy. And that's how I will probably always remember that scene. Make a whole video on that. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's really the next time we see really a collection of these entities. Now, the reason why I'm sort of playing a little loose with these entities and stuff like that is because we commonly now just refer to them as Force ghosts. Now, I do have to add that when the movie came out in the theater, and I was right in the thick of things. Okay, I mean, popcorn. I was in the theater. I saw the original stuff. I don't remember referring to them as what we call Force ghosts. Now, obviously, that's commonly what everyone's calling them. But be perfectly honest, at that time, and I think that movie came out, I want to say around 1983 or somewhere in there, the term Force ghost just really wasn't in the lexicon of those movies, to be perfectly honest. And you say, oh, really? Or what were you called? What were they called back then? Well, I mean, I don't know that they had a specific name. I think it was just Obi-Wan's ghost. Remember, Obi-Wan was really the main ghost image that we saw, aside from that collection at the end. So it really didn't warrant a name. Maybe it was the spirit of Obi-Wan. We had not seen enough of these entities to really create a name for them. So I mean, I'm just pointing out a little fact. It's only more recently with this movie that this whole idea of a quote-unquote Force ghost has been sort of developed and promoted and whatnot. Now the next point I will make is that now we see Yoda for the first time. To my knowledge, as I recall, aside from that little reunion scene, as a Force ghost, and really what amounts to his most, I'll say, robust appearance as a Force ghost. And we see him, utilize his powers in a way that we've never seen before. Like a force projection is purely an apparition. Certainly more of an apparition than a force projection. It has no substance to it. You can't touch it. Would not leave any kind of footprint. The only obvious difference is that they visually look a little different. You might even argue a lot different, because a force projection looks indistinguishable from the real person, whereas the Force Ghost, from what we can see, looks like, very ghosty, just made up a word, but you understand, very ghosty, with blurry outlines and semi-transparent, like Casper the Ghost and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you look at it and can clearly see that as a ghost-like appearance, so you can't mistake, you would not mistake a Force Ghost for the real thing, because they make it look like a ghost. The other observation here, and this is really the kicker right here, is that Force Ghost Yoda used a lightning bolt to strike a tree. I believe it was the tree. And that's quite remarkable that a Force Ghost could wield some type of power or energy. I mean, I'm hesitating to say it was a use of the Force, because that's kind of making a big presumption there. But I mean, you're inclined to believe it was the Force or a Force-related power, right? To do that. It doesn't have to be. It's not stated. I mean, it's the first time we're seeing it, so it's literally whatever you say it is, to be quite honest. But I think you would presume it was. I think logically you can presume it was the Force. Why don't we just cut to the chase and say, yeah, he used the Force. So here's the major distinction. Here's really the major distinction. Well, first of all, they do have two substantial differences in appearance. So Force projection could fool you, could walk around, you wouldn't know it's the real thing. Force Ghost doesn't appear that they could do that. But more importantly, the Force Ghost apparently can interact with the real world, can make a tangible impact on the real world where a Force projection cannot. I mean, those are the rules set up by the movie logic, and Rian Johnson pretty much said that those were the rules. It can't interact with the real world, but clearly it did. So that said, the irony in all this is that a Force Ghost seems to have more power than a Force projection, even though the Force Ghost is the manifestation of a dead person, and a Force projection is a manifestation of a live person. Now, logically, that doesn't quite make sense to me. I mean, to me, does it make sense to you? Does it seem logically like that should happen? That the dead spirit ghost has more power, more tools, more resources than the live manifestation? Now, and what's more, it just seems a little intuitively inconsistent. Now, it would make more sense, I could sort of rationalize it if Force projection was introduced a long time ago, by George Lucas. We saw it a couple times, long time ago, and now in this movie we see a Force Ghost, and comparing the two, you see some differences, and so that was George Lucas's idea of this, and this is Rian Johnson's idea of that, and they weren't thinking about each other. They just conflict. They have some discrepancies. They're not intuitively consistent, that one should do one and the other should do other. because there's really two different people inventing two different things. Okay, I could rationalize how they're different if I thought of it that way. But in this movie, Rian Johnson really introduced both of them, together. Both of those ideas himself. The same person introduced the same phenomenon in the same movie. So he had all the power in the world to make them intuitively consistent. You follow me? So I have a harder time rationalizing it when I think that, well, he could sit down. He wrote them together. He put them both in the same movie. He must have, you would think that he would logically plot out how it would make sense for a Force Ghost to have more powers than a projection. Now you might say, "Oh no, that I did that on purpose. That makes sense to me." Blah 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 blah. Okay, well, doesn't really make sense to me. You would think that a live person would have more tools in the toolbox than the dead spirit ghost, if you will. So, so those are the most salient differences that I see with a force projection and a force ghost. Just summarizing, okay? Now, having said all that, okay, so what? So what difference does it make? Is it important? Does it matter? Well, let's look at this moving forward. So let's just take it one by one. Okay, so now we have force projections. How likely is it that we'll see more force projections in future movies? More specifically, let's go to episode 9. What's the likelihood that we'll see force projections in episode 9? Now, before I answer that, let me preface my answer by saying that unlike a lot of people, it's just my own personal preference. I don't follow all the spoilers and rumors about the next episode and read all the tidbits of who took this role and who's going to be in it and what they're going to be, and script leaks and screenshots from the set and spoiler alerts. I don't read any of that. Purposely, I don't look at the trailers. I don't speculate anything like that. I think if you'd seen my review of in one of my reviews of this movie going back, I think I explained that when I saw Rose Tico for the first time in the movie, that was my first time ever seeing her, because I'd never seen her in a preview, had no idea who this lady was, what her part in the movie was, because I don't watch trailers, don't follow it, nothing, because when I walk into the theater, I really want to just go in with a blank slate, just as blank a slate as possible when I'm going into the movie. It's just my thing. Maybe I'll get into that in another video, but that's how I like to consume certain movies. Okay, so if I say something that is sort of contradicted about what you already know about 9, I apologize. And if I sound naive about what's going to happen in 9, because you already know a lot that's going to happen in 9, I apologize. I don't keep up with it. But let me just give you, my thoughts on the future of force projections. More specifically, do I think we'll see force projections in 9? I mean, first of all, there's only, who's left to do a force projection in the first place. That would have to be logically, Rey or Kylo Ren, I guess, in a sense, though you would think that if he was a student of force projection, he would have picked up that Luke was a force projection. If he was aware of that skill, you would think that he, he would be keen to it, which he wasn't. Now you're going to say, yeah, but now that he's seen it, he's going to mimic it or imitate it or learn it. So now that he can do it, moving on. Okay, no, I don't think it's going to do that. Okay, so logically, you're looking at Rey, who might do it, but she's just learning the Force. Yes, she did pick up rocks with the little knowledge that she had, the boulders. So the idea that she's going to be able to master force projection is just very implausible to me. That's point number one. Point number two is that, it's being written, directed by J.J. Abrams, and just intellectually, the notion that he would build on a phenomenon that was introduced by Rian Johnson just seems, not impossible, but just intellectually doesn't seem like something he would be keen to want to do. Okay, Rian Johnson introduced this cool thing, now I want to put it in my movie. I just intellectually don't see him doing that. I'm not saying there's any kind of conflict between them, but certainly Rian Johnson didn't do J.J. Abrams any favors in bringing along a lot of the stuff that he introduced. So, I just don't really see J.J. Abrams feeling, oh yeah, now I'm going to use force projections. I don't really see that. Intellectually, I just don't see that myself. Could be wrong, but that's just my thoughts on that. Could you see force projections down the road, beyond 9? If I was waging bets on it, I would say it's probably more likely than not likely, greater than 50%, just by the fact that it's now part of the science of the Force. So future filmmakers do tend to, utilize all the different skills and tools in the toolbox at some point. Now, do I think it would be like a major plot point to have, utilizing the force projection in a major plot point like it was in this movie? No, I can't really see that. I could see it more like just a little, short scene tool where they're being chased and they put out a force projection as a decoy, and just a very concise, short device, but not really as a significant plot point, whereby you see it, oh, I used a force projection, oh, okay, well, they've done that before. They did it back in episode 8. Yeah, I remember that. So that's how I could plausibly see it down the road. But now that the cat's out the bag, I don't think you could build a whole substantial plot point around it. I mean, we've been there, we've done that. Now if it's done, I would see it more as like just a throwaway device in a future movie. Now, as far as Force ghosting is concerned, well, I mean, again, I don't know all the spoilers and stuff like that, so again, I apologize, but I would have to believe that Luke Skywalker is going to be a 9 in some manner. We know that by design he's not alive. We know that famously Disney was intent on him not being resurrected. Now, again, I don't know whether that was changed. I don't follow all these developments and stuff like that. But, they in part got rid of the guy, the original director, because it was his intention to bring him back. They said, no, that's a deal breaker. He's not coming back. Sorry. So, I mean, as far as I recall, he's not coming back. So, but I can't believe that we won't see Luke Skywalker somehow in 9. So logically, he has to come back in some type of dead form, and the most obvious device that we know of is as a Force ghost. Now you could say, oh yeah, but they could introduce some other device that we've never heard of. Okay, but then I can't really predict that. But I guess logically you'd have to believe that if he's in 9, is in some manner as a Force ghost, and coming back as a Force ghost. I mean, you don't bring Luke Skywalker back as 9 as a Force ghost just to sit on a log and give advice. I can't see J.J. Abrams doing that. I could see Rian Johnson doing that. I can't see J.J. Abrams doing that. Just have him come back to walk around and talk about philosophy and talking riddles and stuff like that, like Yoda did. No, I can't see that. I would be more inclined to believe, to be perfectly honest, I would be more inclined to believe a Force ghost Luke Skywalker would be involved with some fighting, to be perfectly honest. That would be total fan pandering. I know it. Yes, it would, but I could see that in some form. Now, would it be the major spectacle that we've all been waiting for with the Force and this, that, and the other? That might be a little too much. I'm not sure, but if it was up to me, I wouldn't have any problem with it. I know logically you would say, oh, Force Ghost can't do all that stuff. Wait a minute, they just had a Force Ghost going hog wild with doing all this crazy stuff. That's just too out the box. Okay, I get where you're coming from, but I would just eat it all up. I'm sorry, just as a fan, I would accept it. I would just gobble all of it up. Yeah, I would. Yes, I would. Do they have other plans for Luke? Again, I don't know. Well, if he's going to come back as a Force ghost, it can't be just as a bystander and the guy on the porch ranting. You know what I'm saying? He has to do something very substantial, and especially since this is, let's face it, the last time we're going to see Luke Skywalker in any form. So, you can't have him go out as a punk. It has to be, I would like to think that he would go out in style, in a memorable, extremely memorable way. You know what I'm saying? Which then, but here's the dilemma here with that. If you bring Luke Skywalker back as a Force ghost, and he has like incredible skills and powers, and is really a lethal device that can really inflict damage and just change the nature of fighting and battles and stuff like that, then you open up the door for all the Force ghosts to come back and do that. Yoda could come back as a Force ghost and have all these incredible powers. Anakin can come back and have all these incredible powers. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Basically, any Mace Windu can come back as a Force ghost and join in and have all these incredible battles to fight the First Order. And let's face it, you could get other people from the other side could come back and be in it. Snoke could come back as a Force ghost. Why? If Luke can be a Force ghost and Yoda can be a Force ghost, Snoke had as much power pretty much as them. You could argue has more a more refined, intricate power than them, you would think he could come back as a Force ghost. So you could literally, logically, taking the progression of things, you could have whole armies of Force ghosts battling whole armies of good Force ghosts versus bad Force ghost battles. Where's the stop? You can't just say, oh, only Luke Skywalker can fight as a Force ghost. No, this is going to be a movie where only the Luke Skywalker Force ghost is the only Force ghost that's coming here to fight things and change the direction of stuff. I mean, okay, I can see that happening, but you understand my point. If you're opening that door, then you're really opening the door for all the Force ghosts to, then you're going to say, yeah, but then why didn't Yoda help out, and why didn't Obi-Wan Kenobi come back as a Force ghost? Because they're all the same. They're all in the same Force ghostum. So one's not younger than another. They don't lose the power with time. It's eternal, right? So logically, anybody who's a ghost could logically be a part of it. It just makes you wonder, right? So guys, I'm just here giving you my thoughts. If you like this presentation, hit the like button, and feel free to comment. So that's it for today, guys. I will see you in the next video. Take care.